British citizens living in Europe have accused Theresa May of having sold 4.5 million people down the river by ditching citizens' rights in a bid to secure sufficient progress. British in Europe, a coalition of groups representing the 1.2 million Brits abroad whose lives will be affected by Brexit, said the deal Ms May had secured was even worse than expected for the rights. Meanwhile, 3 million, which represents EU citizens living in the UK, said it had grave concerns for the future following the announcement today, with the emphasis squarely on the Northern Ireland border for the final 2 weeks of the first phase of talks. The campaigners are now worried that citizens' rights, which was supposed to be one of the 3 main separation issues, will be buried under discussion of trade deals. They're concerned that issues such as whether British citizens already in Europe will be able to cross borders to go to work will be forgotten, leading to uncertainty and disruption for British immigrants on the continent. The concerns were echoed by Guy Verhofstadt, the European Parliament's Brexit coordinator. Though the top Liberal MEP said he welcomed the deal as a whole, he said that free movement for British citizens in the EU had to be guaranteed, that EU citizens in Britain should face no costs to stay, and that rights to live with future partners as spouses needed to be taken into account. If these conditions weren't met, the European Parliament would veto the deal, he said. This deal is even worse than we expected. After 18 months of wrangling, the UK and EU have sold 4.5 million people down the river in a grubby bargain that will have a severe impact on ordinary people's ability to live their lives as we do now, said Jane Golding, chair of British in Europe. This is a double disaster for British people living in Europe. At the moment, not only is it unclear whether we keep our automatic residency rights, but it looks like we can also kiss goodbye to continuing free movement beyond any agreed transition period, which so many of us who work across Europe rely on to support our families. The UK wasted a precious opportunity to take up the EU's comprehensive offer on citizens' rights back in June. Instead, they decided to link the status of EU nationals in the UK to immigration, which resulted in the subsequent horse trading and significantly worse status that we all may face now. Looking ahead to Phase 2 of the talks, if it takes 18 months to produce something this bad, then imagine what's going to happen once citizens' rights get buried under all the trade arguments about airline slots and fish carcasses. We urge the European Parliament not to endorse this deal when they vote on it next week in Strasbourg. Nicholas Hatton, founder of EU immigrant group 3 Million, said, although it's a relief that there is now an agreement between the EU and the UK after 18 months, the quality of the deal must be assessed, and we have grave concerns for the future as the EU has given the British government the green light to implement settled status on citizens' rights. Britain and the EU have agreed a reciprocal deal that will apply to both sides. The PM has agreed that EU courts will recognise European Court of Justice judgments for 8 years when deciding citizenship issues, and agreed that a range of relatives will be able to move out and join the families if they are already living in the EU. Benefits and health care for these citizens will also continue as under current rules, and people settled in Britain will be able to leave for 5 years and be allowed to return. More about Brexit. EU citizens' rights reuse content.